How do you add animation to an existing illustration? A common motion design brief is to take an illustration like this and animate it, but it can be easy to get carried away with the delights of After Effects and lose the integrity of the original illustration, which would, at the very least, annoy your illustrator. In this case, it's Julia. I'm Jess for Envato Tuts Plus. I'm a professional motion and graphic designer, and we are going to walk through how to choose what to animate, how to prepare it in Photoshop, and animate it, choosing your effects wisely. All right, so we're in Photoshop, and this is Julia's lovely drawing, which is beautiful, however, not optimized at all for animation, which is not her fault because she didn't think that this was ever going to be animated. That's pretty common. Luckily for us, we've actually got some layers here. Sometimes you might just get given a completely flat illustration, and I would love to tell you that there is a nifty trick that all motion designers use to bring that illustration into motion, but there isn't. It is just a long process of cutting pieces out. So luckily we don't have to do too much of that today, but we do need to do a little bit of it. So I'm going to show you a little bit of how I would do that to this illustration, but skip through the really boring bits for you so you're not here all day. When you first get an illustration from, especially if it's a supplied asset, you want to really look at that illustration for inspiration rather than coming up with your own ideas and forcing that into the illustration. In this instance, there was this really tonal blue twilight scene that to me really said twilight. And there's some shadows already existing here, which are always a fun thing to play with to show the passing of time. So to me, it made sense that this animation would then kind of use those shadows to show night falling. And then it kind of builds on itself a story where the light turns on and you can add something new to this illustration. Sometimes you don't really need to work too hard at this point because you've already got this beautiful illustration and you're really just looking to enhance what's already there. So don't get carried away trying to add bits that don't really fit. Just work with what you've got and it'll all come together naturally.
Struggling for a spark? Fire up the largest unlimited creative subscription in the world. Find and download authentic graphics, templates, photos, and fonts. Get seriously creative. And go supernova with Envato Elements.
So if I wanted to make these shadows move, these ones behind these bars, what have we got here? Oh, the first thing we're going to do is name these layers. So this is a top grain, like her overall, I think you see if I turn that on and off, she's got this nice grain texture. And that'll come in handy later. But as I go through them as well, I'll turn them off so we can see what each layer is. This one is a bit, if you hold Alt or Option and click as well, you'll get just that layer. And actually for this, I might even go down here to add a new layer. And I'm going to fill it with black, 100% opacity. And just drag it down to the bottom so that I can also see in case there's any other missing bits. So this layer is kind of just a bit of building. Then we've also got, so this is where most of the shadows are, it looks like. These ones here, some of the shadows. And then we've got some front color bits, the front bars, more shadow, front color. That's mainly the window. And yeah, you can see that if I turn that back on, these white bits are actually not on the bars. They're just the seeing through here to that background. So if I turn that on, yeah, you can see that's all the way through. So we might have to do some underpainting as well to this to set it up properly. There's the door at the back, that's the ground, and that texture is baked in as well, so that's not on top. So we might have to remake that. And then we've got these two bits here and the back of the door. So, okay, let's do first, the easiest thing to do is going to be this ground bit because I think they're pretty much all on the same layer. So if I flick these on, I've got that, got those. So I'm just going to merge these two layers together basically, and actually this one as well. What I'll do is this layer here is our background color, and I'm going to, I'll switch this on so we can see a little better. I'm going to grab the pen tool and I'm going to just select that bottom bit of color like that. So we've got a path around it, and we'll go to make selection. I want a feather radius of 0 because she's got these really nice sort of edges on her lines that will get fuzzy if you use a feather. So in this particular drawing, I don't want to do that. So on this layer, I'm going to hit Command-Shift-J, which is going to copy, it's going to cut that bottom bit that we just selected out from the rest of the drawing. Now we have this, we have this, we have this. I'm going to merge all these layers by selecting them all, right-click, merge layers, and we'll call this street. So that's how we start to combine the things onto different layers. And basically anything that we want to move separately to another item has to be separated onto a different layer. Now let's look at maybe the hardest bit I think here is going to be these bars because they're kind of all on all sorts of different layers. What I want really is these bits here, they can stay because they're like in front of the bars. But I want this whole bit, I want these bits, and I want these sort of behind shadows on the windows to be all on separate layers. So it's a little bit of a process kind of working out exactly which bits you want, but I know that I want these, and I can sort of turn it off and turn it back on again. Maybe this layer will tell me, yeah, these ones I want to stay, but I want all these ones, and I'm just holding Shift while I'm dragging out this rectangle here so that it grabs what I want. And I think I want both these two. So I'll select that layer again, this one that we're working with, Command-Shift-J, and then we've got these on a clean layer separated from those little bits. But we also want these lines too. So if I just turn off these, what have we got here? So we don't want these ones, but we want to merge. Basically, what might be easier here, you can do it the reverse way. So we're going to select the ones that we don't want in this little section, and we'll Command-J them somewhere else. I don't think we want these ones as well. Do we want those ones up there? I don't know. We'll work it out in a second. Command-Shift-J. Now these are on a separate layer. So if I start to turn all these back on again, and then it's kind of a bit of a process of trial and error. So now I have these on one layer. I have these front bits on a layer. And these, where were they? These front bits on a layer. So we're getting there. But let's merge some of these together. This one with this one down here. These two, I think, are our shadow layers. And you can, often what I'll do is hit Show Transform Controls up here and then move this around and be like, have I got it all? Is this moving in the way that I want? If I move these behind these layers and then do that, you can start to see the motion that we're going to get. And I've got all those pieces that I need. So I think those are the right ones. We'll merge those. And we'll call this shadow. And move that on top just so I can, well, it's actually, no, we'll leave it there where it belongs. What's this? That's bars, that's a bit of the bars, that's a bit of the bars, that's a bit of the bars. We can merge all these if they're in the right, look like they're in the right spots. Merge layers, and we'll call this bars. And then we've got the colors here. So we're going to separate this base bit from the top bit so that when we come into animation, we can add a bit of 3D depth here. So do the same process we did before, where we're going to select this bottom chunk of color, select the right layer, make selection, and then Command-Shift-J. Now we've got that base bit separated out from the rest of it. So we'll call this base. Sometimes the path, for some reason, doesn't go away. I don't really know why. But you can delete it by, if you find your paths window, there will be a work path and you can delete it there. Just delete the work path and we don't need that path again, so it's fine. We've also got this door, so let's do the door. If I just select just these two layers, hit Alt, there's our door, and it's got, you can see the door still has this bit of background, so I'm just gonna select that. Command-Shift-J, So now we have this and the door. We'll merge those layers and we'll call this door. So yeah, this can be a bit of a tedious process, but it is all worth it in the end. And the other good thing is that we don't have to get it really perfect here because Photoshop will keep live updating to After Effects. So we can get it pretty close, and then as we move things in After Effects, go back and refine. So I'm going to add, this layer as well belongs to the bars. So we'll have to put the layer on top, merge it, and then rename it again, annoyingly. And then this bit, I think actually this bit also, this bit we want actually for the base down here, and that bit belongs to the bars. So same process, chop that out. Select. Turn everything back on. Now we have this, and that's going to go with the base. Oops. Where's our base? Oh, I didn't name it base. Merge layers. We'll call this base. Now we have all this. That's looking pretty good. And we're going to call this color. We'll call it build color. So we've got build color, we've got the shadow, and we've got these front bars, bar detail. I'm going to actually go in and erase these shadows because we're going to remake them again in After Effects, and I'll show you how to do that later. But E on the keyboard, erase tool, just erase them. So we have a nice clean bar detail here. So the floor, if we solo this, we can see that it's not fully painted under the building. So if I want to move all of these layers, you can see that very quickly we're going to see the back side of this drawing, which we don't want. So what I'm going to do is basically repaint this shape and this texture as well. I think it'll be really cool if it animates. So I'm going to remake this grain in After Effects to animate. So we actually don't have to worry about the color so much, or keeping that texture here. So I'm going to use the brush tool and select, actually what I might do first is cut. I think I want this part of it to be attached to the street because we'll have the street as our topmost layer. So we'll merge this new layer that we've just chopped off to the street so that now we'll rename the street again. So now that's basically our frontmost layer because it's closest to where we're going to have our camera. And then our concrete layer, which we'll call this concrete, I'm just going to go in with a brush. Another thing that actually is quite good to mention, and I should have done this from the start, is to bring in a reference of the illustration that you're working with. This is really important when you're working with someone else's work, especially because you don't want to change the illustration so much that it doesn't resemble their work anymore. We want to maintain that integrity of the original illustration. So it's always good to have just a PNG of what the original looks like in both Photoshop and After Effects so that you can always look back to make sure that you're not missing anything as you do this very messy sometimes process. Okay, so now where were we? We were going back to this concrete bit. So I can see there's this white line here. I could chop this out and put it onto the door layer here so that it's connected to the door. But I think it's going to get a bit messy here because there's sort of these bits and I think we'll lose the line. So I'll redraw that as well. So we're just going to fill this in fill the concrete layer in with this color. You could also do this with a shape, but the brush sometimes makes me feel like I'm an illustrator, so that's fun. So there's our concrete layer. It's just a fill right now, and it's going to go behind our street layer. And then we have the door, and we want to add that white line to this door. So another really useful thing while you're painting back these illustrations is to try and match your brushes as close as possible when when it's going to be seen. Like here, it didn't matter because it's just a background, but up here, if you click on this, you get all the different brushes that Photoshop has. And if you need more brushes, like the ones that come with default Photoshop are good, but it's always good to have options. So if you go up to this little drop-down menu and go to get more brushes, it'll open up Adobe's brush portal, and you can download mega packs for free. And I really I think I just have the mega pack, and that basically covers everything that you would ever need. So I would install that, and then we can match this line more accurately. If you can't find what you need in that mega pack, you should also check out Envato Elements because they have plenty of custom brushes there as well. So if you've downloaded those and you want to import them, you can just hit that same menu and go import brushes, and they'll be in your downloads folder or wherever you saved them. And then they will appear down here, our mega pack. So I reckon maybe something in drawing box would be good. But if I'm going to make a new layer as well so we can get this right, and we'll make it white. And it's good here if you have a drawing tablet or a Wacom, it can be useful to get that out, but because this is only a little line, I'm just going to try and do it with my mouse. But rotate R on your keyboard will rotate, and then you can kind of get the right angle so that you can get this line properly. But how does that brush look? What do we think? I think it's probably not quite as grainy as what she's got, so I might reduce the flow, which will give us a bit more sort of transparency around these edges, and maybe also the opacity a tiny bit. Yeah, I reckon we can get away with that. It's pretty important to try and find a really good matching brush. There's so many. You could get stuck doing this for hours. Today I won't. I'm going to stick with this one. But it is important that you try and match as best you can with what you have. This was done in Procreate as well, so I'm never going to be able to get the same brush. But if it was done in Photoshop, you could always ask the illustrator what brushes they used so that you can draw back over the lines you need to. We'll just fill in this line. It's kind of wonky. You can also actually, smoothing is a good tool. You can turn this up and then it will automatically smooth your line out once you've done it. Or sometimes it will. Maybe if we turn it up a lot. There we go. As you're going, kind of keeps it smooth. So that looks pretty good, but I've gone too far. Just maybe with a hard one. Raise that back. Cool. All right. So that looks okay to me. I'm going to merge that with the door. So this is basically the process. And yes, as you can see, it's a bit long and tedious, but it's worth it in the end, and makes for a much easier time once we get into After Effects if everything is on the right layers and named. In After Effects, we're going to add this frame back in on top, so you're not going to see anything past this edge. So you don't have to worry so much about it being super perfect in here. This Photoshop file basically becomes our little working mess. So it's good actually to save a copy of this as your motion file so that you still have the original illustration as well to go back to. I'm just going to go through and finish the final pieces of this one, make sure it's all in the right layers. So we've done all that. I've painted behind some sections here, like in behind these white bits, so it's not transparent. Now that's actually white. And named everything as well. Very importantly, named it all. We've got this front build detail. We've got the shadow separated. We've got the base of the building is separated. We've got the this weird color bit separated from the shadows, the window, the door, the street, the concrete background. We're ready to get into After Effects. So we'll save this, open up After Effects and find your file and drag it in like so. Now we want to bring this in as a composition. If we bring it as footage, it'll merge all the layers onto one, which is not going to be very useful since we just did all that chopping. So we'll bring this as a composition, editable layer styles, yes, and hit OK. Cool. And I like to keep my folders immediately tidy. So if you add a folder, we'll call this assets. Add another folder, we'll call this main comp. Add another folder, and it'll be subcomps. And then we can just stay super organized. I'm gonna call this one main comp because we'll do everything in here. Drag that into our main comp, and then our layers. This little folder here is all of our original layers, and I'll put that in assets. So main comp. All right, this is our illustration. You can see we've got all of our Photoshop layers down here. We're gonna keep these as Photoshop layers, which actually with Photoshop, there's no other way to do it. But we're going to keep these layers as they are. And these are live linked as well. So as we move stuff around, if we see that, you know, something is off place, or we need to we want to move this too much and we need to fill this in, you can go back into Photoshop and repaint that layer again, hit save, and it, as long as it's named the same, it will automatically update, which is really useful. So we'll probably be doing a bit of jumping back and forth. But the first thing we're going to do is look at our composition settings here. So if you go up to composition and go composition settings, you can see Julia has done a very good job in making this illustration double the size of what we might need for social media, which is very handy because, you know, with motion, you always want to start a bit bigger and then go smaller. So we're going to make our comp 1080 by 1080. So that it's the size that we would want to export it at. And we're going to keep the frame rate at 25, and we're going to make our duration about 10 seconds and hit OK. So now everything is too big, but it's OK. We can just scale. If you select all of these and right-click transform, fit to comp, it will resize it all for us. And now if you hit the S on the keyboard, we'll get our scale properties, and that's made that exactly half, well, not quite exactly, it's 52.7, but it is about half size, which is really good for us because now we can scale up any of these elements to 100. If we wanted to, you know, zoom in or something here, we're not going to lose any resolution. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in our reference image, put it in assets because we are staying organized, and drop this into here. Also, we'll fit this to comp. So the same as Photoshop, we have a reference of what it's supposed to look like at the end. If it jitters around a little bit, don't worry too much because it is motion. There is a certain amount of loosey-goosiness that we go with here because it's constantly moving. It's never going to look exactly like this, or it might for like one frame, but don't worry too much, but keep the integrity. We'll make this a guide layer. So if you go right-click guide layer, now this is not going to show up in our renders, which is super handy as well. And I'll just lock it and turn it off because we don't need that right now. The next thing we're going to do is create this frame so we can see what we're working with there. So I'll go right click and we'll have a new solid, and we'll make it white down here. Make sure it's the comp size, 1080 by 1080. Bam, we have a solid. And then I'm going to duplicate it, Command D on the keyboard, and I'll just turn off that bottom one using this little eye tool and scale it down. Let's turn the reference back on actually, and scale it down until we're about level with that reference. And if you really want to be particular, you can turn the opacity T on the keyboard to bring up opacity. But I reckon it's going to be about 91. Yeah, 91 scale for that white solid. Then we're going to pre-compose these two shapes. Right, if you select the shapes that you want to pre-compose, right-click pre-compose, and we'll call this frame. And if we go into here, we're just going to alpha matte this shape. So to open up, if it's not here like it is right now, you can right-click columns modes, and it'll bring up the track matte. So this little pick whip will pick one solid to the other, or our opacity is still down on one of these layers. Here it is. It doesn't really matter which one in this case because all we want is that frame. So if it's wrong, if you've done it the wrong way, you can just flick this little button and it'll do the inverse of that matte. So there is our frame on top of everything. We now are hiding all of our messy edges. I might actually bring that down 1 more pixel so that it really, maybe we'll do 89, 2 more pixels. Or maybe that's too far. Got to be perfect, everybody. There we go. Now we're really hiding all of our messy edges. All right. Now we're also going to pre-compose this top grain, and we'll do that. We'll do some animation to this later, but for now, we're going to pre-compose that, and I'm going to turn it off and lock it as well, just so it's out of the way of what we're doing. And now we're going to do some parenting, and we're going to add in a little camera and get our base blocking movement down. So let me also drag out all our layers, 10 seconds. Drag out the top grain to 10 seconds. I also really like to color code my layers because I like to know which, I don't know, kind of helps my brain work it out. So everything, all these ones, which is kind of our building and the window, I'm going to make orange. So all of that basically is our building. We've also got the door in the background. I don't know, maybe you can be cyan. We've got the street, and we've got the concrete background here, which maybe I'll make red. And these ones, our background layers, we're not really going to touch those, so they can also be locked. Okay, so we're going to start with just a little bit of light parenting. We're going to parent our animation. I'm also going to open up our alpha matte column here as well. So right-click, columns, modes, and we get our track matte. The full suite of pick whips at our disposal. And we're going to, so this shadow layer, we want this to move with the, however this moves, basically. So I think our front build detail is going to be kind of like the hero layer for that section. So we'll parent that, and also the front build color, which can go, I think this can go above there. Yeah. The front build color will also parent that to that front build detail. So now if I move this one, that whole section here is going to move together nicely. And then let's do the window there as well. All that is going to move together. So now let's add, I want to add that scaling in motion, really subtle animation. I think overall we're going for subtlety here. In terms of like the actual movement, we don't need any flashy camera moves, but a nice scale will do it. So if we go right-click, new camera, we'll add a camera to this scene. A 50mm lens is fine, and a 2-node camera is the one we want to go with. So here's our little camera. And then we're going to add a null object immediately as well. So again, right-click, new null object, and this is going to be our camera control. And we'll make this a 3D layer and parent our camera to that 3D layer. And I always like to make my really important nulls fuchsia because they're really easy to see. And we're also going to make all of these elements, our sort of hero elements of the scene, 3D as well. So now they will be affected by the movement of this camera. So if we pan in now, you can see they're all moving. But things like the background color, and the frame obviously are all 2D layers. So they're going to stay as they are, which is perfect for what we need. So let's add a keyframe at the start, and in about 5 seconds, I probably want to be, I don't know, maybe here. How does that look? Play it back. It's pretty, I'll put it on quarter res so we can get this moving a bit faster. I reckon that's pretty good. It's subtle enough. We're going to add some other moving textures and things, so I think that'll be good. We'll go to the very end and we're going to copy this front keyframe because we want a nice loop. So that's our basic camera move for this illustration. But I think it's going to be more interesting if we have a slight parallax effect. So we're going to manipulate these layers to add that. We'll start with the street. So if we bring up the position keyframes of the street, and we want to bring this street element towards the camera. It's going to be our topmost layer. So maybe let's see what -1000 looks like. If we push it all the way back in space, and if you want to see where that's sitting now in relation to everything else, you can see that's our street layer here. Here's our camera. This is the top view as well on the left here. And then this is the rest of our elements sitting all the way back here. That's pretty far. And we'll scale this back down again until we are about the right size. And again, flick your reference on, make sure you're sitting about the same mark for this. Maybe it's more like 17.5, gonna get pretty granular. I reckon that's actually way too far. It's kind of moving, I think, too fast for my liking. So I'm gonna bring that back down in space. Maybe we only need more like -400, and we'll scale it back up. How's that look? Yeah, that's better. Subtle. And we're going to do this same process basically to a few of the other elements. So our front build detail, which we know controls all of this, is going to move front in space as well. Maybe we don't, it's not as far as the street in terms of how close it would be to the camera, but I want it to look like it's sticking out because it's, it's part of the building that's coming towards you. So maybe like -200 is good. Scale it down again till we match the reference. You can unlock this and make this like 30% opacity. Then you can really see exactly where that's going to start to line up. Sometimes you have to go really deep in here and do it. There we go. Do it by the numbers rather than dragging. You just get a bit more control. And the bottom, we want this to be a little bit far out as well, but not too far. So maybe this one's more like 100. That one's pretty subtle. Scale that back down. That looks pretty good. And the door, we're going to move that back in space as well. So let's move that one. We're not going to go negative. We're going to go forward maybe 50, because that's far behind us. And then that is actually going to, the reason why our movements are so subtle is because that's actually going to exaggerate then the movement of the things that are further in front. If you have things behind as well, it'll all add sort of onto each other. You can see now the concrete is in front of our door, but we actually want it behind. So I'm going to push that one just behind everything else, scale it up. There we go. Perfecto. All right, I reckon that is looking pretty good. I've just noticed as we're flicking on our reference off and on that our white line under our door hasn't come through. So this is a great way to show how you can go back and edit that Photoshop file again. So I'm just going to save this because we always save and go back into our Photoshop file. I think I must have at some point painted over it, and I'll just do that bit again basically. So we'll solo our door. You've seen all this before. So we'll add our line back in. There it is. It's not perfect, but it'll do. And if we hit save, and we go back into After Effects, well, boom, it even beat me back to the program. It's there so fast. This camera move is looking good, but it's a little bit because there's no easing on these keyframes. That is the official sound of that particular movement as well. Whoop, whoop. So we're going to keyframe assistance, easy ease. And then I like to separate my dimensions here, even if we're only moving in one dimension. For instance, right now, I'm probably not going to animate the X and Y, but I like to use the value graph to edit my easing. So I'm just going to right-click, separate dimensions. We can turn these keyframes off, and then if we make sure these are all eased, and then hit our graph editor, we can really see this curve of how zoomed in we're getting. And you can then edit as well how much that zoom is by moving this point. But all I want to do really is just make sure that these curves are nice and eased. Slows down and then it comes back out nice and slowly. The steeper the curve, the faster the animation. The flatter the curve, the slower the animation. So you can see here, it really slows towards the top. If we wanted it to like really hard flash zoom in, crash zoom at the start and then really slow down, we could move our curve to something more like that. But I think because we're going for subtlety, this illustration is already beautiful. It doesn't need much in terms of actual movement here. So we're going to keep it like that. All right, so that's our camera move done. Well done, everybody. Some round of applause. Let's add a little bit more subtle animation and move these shadows that we so carefully cut out. So this is our layer here. And I want, basically until we get to about here, before the light turns on, this is where I want them to end. But we're going to start them right back at the start. I'm going to move them slightly, and I might even just use my little arrow keys on my keyboard to do this. So, because it's going to be a very subtle animation. We'll put it at full res. How's that? If that moves now with our camera, you can see, and it kind of shows that time is slowly passing. Cool. I'm pretty happy with that. Sweet. So our shadows, they are moving. And the other thing, if we look at our reference image, which is down here, is what's the big difference we have here as well is that this bottom bit should be white with these little shadows that we erased earlier, right? So I'm going to put these in manually because I want them to move as well with this shadow. So let's create a shape that matches, let's turn on our reference so we can kind of match that angle that Julia's got. But if I hit my pen tool, we're just going to make sure nothing is selected down here. We're just going to draw that angle out. And then I'm going to make it really, really long up here. Doesn't have to be perfect here because we will mask this all off. I don't want any stroke, and white is okay. So get a shape that kind of looks like this, and we can center this anchor point. I use Motion 2 to do this, but if you don't have this, you can also right-click, transform, center anchor point in layer content, and that will do the same thing, just a bit more steps. So I'm gonna, basically drag this down so it's the whole way, and then come back to our pen tool and drag out these two end bits so that we're covering this whole section. And then let's call this base shadow, and we're going to pre-compose it. Base shadow. Because we want two of these basically, so it's just going to be easier to pre-compose it above our reference. There it is. So here's that little bit, and we're going to make, actually let's grab, we need this color as well. So we could, let's maybe from Photoshop, it might be better. It'll be just a bit more accurate. The After Effects eyedropper tool is sometimes not super reliable. So let's grab that, copy, and go back into our base shadow. And I'm going to duplicate the shape, Command D, and then up here in fill properties, I'm going to paste that color. We've got these two shapes. We've got the navy and the base color of that hole in the building. So we're going to just drag the shadow underneath, and then we're going to put a position keyframe on this white piece. And we know that at 5 seconds, we wanted it to have stopped moving. And I want it to kind of have it look like that shadow is moving in the same way. I'm just going to also toggle on transparency here so I can really see the edges. This little button is very handy. And also this little button is very handy. If you turn this on and off, I'm not sure what we call this. Outlines, I don't know. But basically, sometimes I will accidentally turn this off and it's very annoying until I realize that it's off. But it shows the edges or not of your shape. So I can see that I've really lined up these edges. Whereas if I had this on, this one on, I might not be able to see that like 1 pixel difference. So I kind of use that, turn it on and off at your whim. But basically now it looks like that line is, that shadow is moving along here. And I think I want it to stop not all the way at the end. So we match her illustration again. So let's make it, use the arrow keys if you must. Oops, wrong bit. How does that look? Maybe even a little bit more this way. Cool. So that's our base shadow, and we're going to alpha matte this because obviously right now it doesn't look very good, does it? It's in the wrong spot. So here is our comp. I'm going to move it till it's about in the right spot. Maybe we might even need to scale it up 101 or something, and then bring it down. We might not even need to alpha matte it. We can just bring it down behind the bottom layer. So now, bada bing, bada boom, but it's not moving with that, is it? Because it's not 3D and the camera is affecting everything else. So let's make it 3D, and let's also bring it to -100, which is the Z space of this bottom piece, so that they're best mates and sitting in the exact same place in our 3D space. We'll scale that down again, arrow it into place, and we'll also duplicate it and then just move it down, and then we have 2 of them. And we're going to make it orange as well so that it matches the rest of this building family. Cool. All right, so that is our shadow moving done, which is subtle but beautiful, shows that time passing, and I think this is starting to really come together. Now, what happens at 5 seconds? You get home, you turn on the light in your front hallway, and you relax from your very stressful day as a motion designer. So let's add in a light, and this is where we're going to start to actually really change what Julia's done here. So remember to do it with consideration. So same again, we're going to grab our pen tool, and this is going to be a very easy shape to draw. We're just going to follow her lines here of the edge of this window, and then kind of just imagine where it ends up here. You can also move the points as you go around if you stay selected on the pen tool. Maybe down here, out of frame, and then I think it'll be cool if this corner kind of stays also not lit, even though physically that might not happen. I think it'll look better. So now we have this shape. Let's make it a nice orangey color that really, I think this really contrasts quite nicely with that blue. So here's our light. We'll call it light, and we'll make it orange. And we're going to drag this down, make it 3D as well, and make sure that it's in front of our window object. So where was our window? Was it 200, -200? So we'll make this -200 as well, or negative, whatever, negative, just in front of it is good. And scale it down until we're at the right size. Let's also, because I can't see anything of what I'm doing right now. So we'll make that -400 so that it's just in front of the street, and scale it up so that it's kind of matching that. And you might, because it's in front, you might get a little bit of overlap with that window, but it's going to be yellow as well. So I think we'll pretty much hide that detail in the animation. Cool. So there's a light on, and we're going to cut this light layer. I'm going to make it a different color so I can really see it. Yellow. We're going to cut it. Alt close bracket is what you can use there to cut that layer on at that 5 second mark. So it's like, bam. And maybe it would be good as well to add some, I don't know, maybe it flickers on slightly. So if we drop in an opacity keyframe, have it start at 0, and then go up to, I don't know, 45, go down again, up, down, and then the final opacity that we want, and then toggle these keyframes. Toggle hold means that there's no animation that happens between them. So it'll just be hard cutting. Basically, if you look at this on the graph editor, you can see they're so straight that they're happening instantly, basically. So there's that. Let's also make the window turn yellow. So if we toggle this down, we're going to use a fill effect. I'm going to, again, jump into Photoshop really quickly, grab this color, copy its value, and then go to our effects and presets panel. If you can't see this, it'll be in Window, Effects and Presets, and search for fill and drag this onto our window layer. It's going to make it red. That's the default, but we have luckily copied this blue color. I'll set a keyframe so that if we press U as well on the keyboard, we'll open up all of our keyframes for that layer. But yeah, so all of this we want to be blue, and then as it hits here, we want this to come on and be orange. So maybe we'll grab the same orange that we used for our shadow and copy that into there. And now we've got this, banging. That looks really cool. I'm also going to toggle hold these keyframes so we don't have any change in the color. The light is just on, you're home. And maybe let's delay that slightly. Cool. So we've got that working there. I think as well I want at 10 seconds for it to flicker back off, because then we get a nice, kind of indicates the loop is coming. So let's just copy these keyframes and paste them at the end. And if we go in, I'll just reverse it basically. So I'll take the end keyframe, which is on, and then shuffle them this way and make sure this last keyframe is like off. And then if we watch this, bam, it's just a little bit easier than a hard cut. All right, cool. So let's add some textures to this, because this looks pretty good, but I think the flatness of this shape here doesn't match the nice kind of grainy textured elements of Julia's illustration. And we want to make this look like she's drawn it, we haven't added this in. So let's add a gradient fill to this instead so that we have a bit of fall off. If you click the fill word up here with your layer selected, you get all the different fill options, and we want a radial gradient. So hit OK. And then if we click this again, it'll bring up the details of this particular one. So actually might just go back and copy this color again before we do this. Okay. Go back in and let's make it that color to that color. So it's exactly the same, but then we want, add a extra spot. We want it to end at 0 opacity or start. It doesn't really matter because we're going to control that with these 2 dots here. So these dots are our gradient controls. You can see down here in the gradient fill settings, you get a start point and an end point. You can animate those as well, which is pretty cool. But if you can't see them, sometimes they hide a bit. You just have to click this gradient fill layer as well, or select one of these and they should show up. Sometimes also they can be like way over here for some reason. So if that happens, just center them, put these points to 0 and it should recenter. Just nifty, fun After Effects things. So I'm going to move our start point out of frame here and this one back here. So now we have this kind of nice fall off, which is also going to mean our grain effect will be more effective because there's difference in pixels here. So let's add that grain effect in now by using a layer style. So layer styles are a really powerful part of After Effects, and they sit on top of all your other effects. So if you apply, a fill and then a bunch of these other ones and blah, 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 if you apply a layer effect, it will apply that after all those effects as well. So it's really good if you want to add a stroke to a shape or something and you want that to affect the whole kit and caboodle of all the other stuff that you have. It's really powerful to get to know and be happy with. So let's add an outer glow here. And I think let's also change this to add, because I think that looks more like a light, but it's a bit intense. So maybe even let's bring this down. And because we've got opacity keyframes on here already, if I was to go, oh, but I only want this to be this much, it's going to affect all of our keyframe. It's not going to affect all of our keyframes. So what we want to do is make sure all of our keyframes are selected. So if you press the name here, it will select all the keyframes that are active on that particular tool. And then you can drag it down and it will adjust all the layers at once. So if you see here, and then we pull this, it's adjusting all our keyframes, not just that single one. All right, so we've also got this outer glow layer style. So let's go in and add some settings to this. So what we want to do is pump up the noise on here, which if we turn on to full res for a moment, you'll see gives us these nice kind of grain throughout the whole thing. Because there's a gradient in here, it's affecting the whole thing quite nicely. In this outer glow technique, there's spread, size, range, jitter, all these kind of settings you can tweak to really define this this edge here. So I'm just going to play around with these until I'm happy. I want it to look like it's kind of fading. So a small spread and maybe a big size is good in this case. So then we get this, nice kind of glowy edge. It's a little bit, the color's not quite right. It's not really matching. So I'm just going to pick sort of this color so that it all fits together. And that I think is looking pretty good. Cool. So there's a bit of grain on our light. We also want to add grain. Remember Julia's lovely illustration has this lovely grain pattern on the ground here on the concrete, which we don't have. So let's go add that in. Let's pre-compose our concrete. We'll call it concrete. We're going to use a different grain effect in here. I'm also going to drag in the reference to this here so I can really keep an eye on how much grain we need to add, and I'll scale this up so it's about the same size too, so we can do this really accurately. So on this top layer, I'm going to go up here, go Effect, Noise and Grain, and go Add Grain. Now this effect can sometimes be a little bit chunky to deal with, so it will give you this little box to like test it out in before you can apply it to the whole shape, which is quite handy. So we'll just do that for now. But I'll just adjust these settings basically until we get a grain that is similar to what Julia's got here. So it's a monochromatic grain. We're going to take all those bad bits of colors out. I think we can, adjust the intensity. The size is probably maybe something like that. There's heaps and heaps of settings here that you can adjust with and play with to get the right kind of grain, which is quite cool. Oh yeah, down here in application, you can change things like how dark the shadows are and kind of get a bit more contrast. I think hers is not too contrasty, but it's got maybe the shadows are not quite as dark here, but the highlights are higher. We've got kind of some really white bits. So maybe the midtones need to come up as well. Basically get it to where it looks similar enough. And then animation as well. If you play this is going to be, it's probably way too much. So let's make that like 3. But this will also be under a posterized time later. So don't worry too much about that. It's more for your machine, All right, so let's then viewing mode final output, and it'll apply that to this whole shape. And let's move down some res so we can kind of actually watch that. Although you probably do want to keep on full res just to make sure that you're matching the look that we're going for. So I still think it's not quite bright enough, and we might be able to do that with some blending mode effects here. It might be a little bit of a combination of adjusting these values of, intensity here along with these. So maybe something like that. And then if we drag up the shadows, there we go, that's kind of getting there. Again, this you might be like, wow, surely that's close enough. But I think it's important when you're working with other people's work to really get into the detail of it. Let's go with this for this tutorial, but you can play with that till the cows come home. All right, I'm also going to mask this because you can see in her reference that sort of towards the edges, if I bring this over, towards the edges, it darkens off down here because she's put a big splat in the middle. So let's switch that off. And with our pen tool, we're going to just draw that kind of shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to kind of include all the edges. I've also make sure you're selected on this layer, otherwise you'll draw a shape. And then I'm going to just also up here in our pen tool, we can convert this anchor to be a bit softer. And then if we hit M on the keyboard, it's going to open up our mask properties, and we're going to feather that mask till we've got something where you can't see those edges, and we look a little bit closer to Julia's reference here. Maybe it's a bit more tweaking. Tweaky, tweaky, tweak. You could do this forever till you get it perfect, but that looks pretty good. So I think there's still something missing. I reckon it would be cool to add a character to this scene, but I definitely don't have time to do a walk cycle. So I jumped on Elements and found this businessman walking, which I think is going to be perfect. If you haven't heard of Elements, one subscription gets you unlimited access to millions of creative assets that you can download and use in your projects right away. Things like video templates, stock footage, music, fonts, and heaps more. If you're creating content for the internet, Elements is where you need to be. Check out the link in the description below. Let's go into our main comp and drag in our man walking. So he's a bit big. Let's scale it down. And what I want to do basically is have him like walking until 5 seconds. He's going to walk across the screen this way, and then it'll be insinuating that he's just arrived home and he's turned on the light. But I really like the kind of, moody shadows, and I think it's going to play really nicely off the layers we have on this building. So firstly, he's walking the wrong way and he's not really going anywhere. So let's go into our pre-comp and we will flip him. So you can select this layer and go right click, transform, and flip horizontal, and he's flipped. And let's just chuck in some keyframes right now. I'm not really sure how this is going to fit yet. In terms of speed and all that kind of stuff and where he needs to be in this comp, but we just want him to be moving across for now up until 5 seconds. But what's going on? This, for some reason, sometimes when you drag stuff in, it's got a really weird time code, but we can fix that by going into your composition settings and just zeroing this out, this start time code. He's probably part of some big project, and that's why that's happening. Okay, cool. So he's walking across screen and he actually looks quite good. His feet aren't sliding, so that's great. How's it looking here? Cool. So we're going to actually duplicate this 4 times because we're going to alpha map it to the different parts of our building and the ground. So let's do that 4 times. We'll call this one man walking ground. We'll call this one man walking base, which is the base of our building. Call this one man walking window, and we'll call this one man walking like grate, kind of those details. Maybe we'll call it details so it matches our other layer. And what color should we make this? My favorite part of animating. And we'll also make him a 3D layer. So he's affected by the camera, and because we're also going to use the position and rotation of this to insinuate that he is in this scene. So for now, let's just deal with the ground. If he's walking past, he's going to be on an angle. So we want to bring up our rotation properties. He's going to be on an angle that matches the perspective of our ground. So let's twist the X rotation and also the Y. And then I'm going to move it. I don't really want to adjust. I think he's a bit big too. So let's just scale him down in here. Yeah. I don't really want to move him too much in space because we have these like parallax layers. So I don't want to move him in towards the camera or behind the camera too much, but we might sort of get away with it. How's that? He's kind of walking. His shadow is going to hit across there. Cool. And then, but I think maybe what is going to look good is if we stretch him a little bit too. So if I bring up the scale properties in here and uncheck the link, I can scale him this way, which looks a bit ridiculous, but I think that'll be better here. Yeah, cool. All right, so that's him walking across the ground. Maybe even, let's just tweak that a little bit more so he's really flat. Cool. Now, when he hits the building, we want him to be upright, right? Because that's not how a shadow is going to reflect on that building. And we also don't want to see him on this building. And because, you know, there's bits of it going into this, I don't really want to alpha mat it because, yeah, that's just kind of going to get a bit messy and painful. So we're just going to use a mask, which is going to be much simpler. So I'll just go and select the mask tool or the pen tool. And because we've selected on this layer, it's going to automatically draw a mask. And I'm going to just really kind of roughly mask out the shape of our building just till it's going to cover where he's going to eventually go. But it's done it the wrong way. So if we hit M and go subtract, then he's going to be behind the edge of that building, which is great. Perfect. Cool. All right, so now let's look at these other pieces. I might actually, where is he? I think it's going to be easier if we do this. We do all the movements on one of these layers and then duplicate them. So ignore what I did before. Let's just start with the base. We're going to also bring up our rotation properties and we're going to angle it so that he looks like he might be on the building. And move the position so he's kind of lined up with his ground shadow self. So here we go. He's kind of suitcases together. He might need to be rotated even more and then pushed back. Look. Just be mindful of moving. I think we might have to move him in space a little bit here because he's going back to be against the wall, but just be mindful that you don't chop him in front of layers and things like that. Cool. So I think that's going to work. We might even need to just adjust his layer timing if you drag this on the timeline so that he matches up a little bit better, but it's also going to look quite cool if it's slightly offset anyway, so don't worry too much about that until we have things alpha matting. So that looks pretty good. Let's alpha mat this to the base, front build bottom. So now he's alpha matted there, which is good, but now we've lost the base because when you alpha mat something, it turns off that layer thinking you don't need it, but we do. So we'll just go switch it back on. And as you can see as well, kind of somewhat annoyingly, the trick we did with the shadows before isn't part of that layer. So I'll actually also just pre-compose all of these elements, our shadows that we made earlier and the front build bottom. I'll call this building bottom. And then make sure that it's a 3D layer as well again. And I might even use collapse transformation so we're looking at what's in that comp rather than the comp as a whole, but it'll still not affect our alpha mat. Or it shouldn't. Let's just try. Building bottom. Yeah. Cool. So now our alpha mat is sort of a bit neater there. And I think actually maybe the timing is right if he lines up there. So that's good. Let's duplicate it again. And this time we're going to switch the alpha mat to the window. And we'll just turn the window back on. And we're going to we'll name this window. We always name our layers. Thanks, Ben Marriott. And then we'll call this one detail as well. And we'll switch this one to that front build detail. And turn that layer back on. And I think we're missing one, which is the color. So maybe one more time, actually, we need this. We'll call Build color. Yep. And we'll turn this one back on. I hope you're all still following. It's a little bit of a process, but it's going to look really cool. We're going in to this, so that's all alpha matted now. And you can see as he walks in front of the building, it's like his shadow moves upon it, which is pretty cool. But a shadow is never 100% opacity. Let's bring him down to 40 maybe. Cool. And then to really make this sing, I'm just going to offset the window because the window is like slightly behind the other things. And maybe we'll offset, I don't know, maybe one of these other ones just slightly in space so that it's just a little bit messier. You can see he kind of hits them like a shadow would on different layers, which I think looks pretty cool. His kind of body is getting a bit messed up, so maybe let's move, it might be easier just to move his ground a little bit forward in time. Might be better to move the ground slightly this way in position, and then if you double click any mask point, you can select that whole mask and just adjust that back, and then he kind of lines up a little bit better. It'll take a little bit of tweaking to get this kind of stuff right. Don't be worried if you're not getting it immediately or if it takes a bit of time to work it out. It's not a science, it's an art, you know. But I reckon something like that is looking pretty cool. Lastly, we're going to add a grain to him as well, so he matches the rest of our sort of artistic direction here. And it's going to be the same way that we did the grain on our light as well. So a layer style using an outer glow, but this time our color is going to be black. And actually, it might be easier to do this if he is at full opacity in here. I think this will look better, and then we'll do his opacity on the pre-comp. So let me just show you that. So let's if we make this full, we're going to turn up that noise to 100% again. Spread and adjust these until we're kind of happy with a grainy edge. Maybe something like that. Looks kind of like our drawings. And the opacity at 100, I think. Yeah, then it's going to really, really merge this outside line and make him look like he's all noisy. And then on all of these ones, we'll make this 40, so he's still. Finally, just to neaten this off, we're going to just move the frame back on top. So if you select all of it and go Command-Shift, close bracket, it will jump to the top of your layer stack. So that looks pretty good. He's walking across screen, he's getting home, and he's turning on the light, and it is a beautiful evening here in our illustration. Finally, let's go back to our friend, this grain that we forgot about. Bring that to the top, and really simply we're going to deal with this one. I'm just going to rotate it. So you could match this in Photoshop and paint a brush, a few different times, or get one from your Illustrator so that it's different. But in a pinch, we can just rotate it every 2 frames. So Command arrow back and front arrow as well will move forward a frame, which is quite handy. But first, actually, let's make this composition. We're going to do this 10 frames a second, and I will tell you why shortly. So 2 frames, let's rotate this 90 degrees, go 2 frames again, we'll go 180 so that it's not just looking like it's rotating in a circle. And then we'll go -90, so it's the other way. And then we will hold all of these keyframes. So now every 2 frames it kind of does this. I think that's all the degrees we want. 180, -90. Yep. Trim this comp. So now we've got this like little loop of texture. And if we go back into our main comp, we can time remap this. So right click, time, enable time remapping, and it'll, now this comp exists for the whole time, but as you can see, it's falling off after this last keyframe. So we want it to loop. So let's move this here and go back a frame, drop in another keyframe, and then Alt click to put an expression here. And we're just going to type out loop out. and then delete that last keyframe. And now that texture will just keep going forever on top of our animation, which is pretty good. So that's happening. Last effect, the last one I promise, is a posterized time, which will change the frame rate of this animation, without changing the frame rate of our overall export. So let's add an adjustment layer, and we'll get posterized time. And we're going to drop this. This is why I made the top grain 10 frames per second, is because I wanted to really control how many frames per second this grain moves. Whereas if I had this at 25 and then had it under the posterized time, sometimes it just doesn't work as well to control the keyframes. You're kind of leaving it a bit up to the whim here of our posterized time layer. So we'll do this. Let's make it back to 10 maybe. And that, I think, is looking pretty good. You could play around with this as well. You maybe like 6 and see what that might look really steppy, but it could be really beautiful, at such a low frame rate. But the good thing about this posterized time layer is that now when we go to export, it's still going to export at 25 frames per second, which for Instagram or wherever this is going to mesh nicely with whatever upload requirements you have. So that's a good way to fake a frame rate. Great, so there's our finished animation. I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. I think we haven't gone too overboard on the suite of After Effects we could have, and we've exercised some really good restraint in making sure that this stays true to her original illustration. So there we go. That's my process for taking a static illustration and getting it moving. Let me know down in the comments if you use a similar process or if you have any other tricks up your sleeve. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this tutorial, also please consider subscribing.